So that's kind of like where we're coming round to in our last session, which is on supporting independence, encouraging autonomy, supporting this challenge of your child being born totally dependent on you for their warmth, for their shelter, for the food, for the love. Right? They're totally dependent on you in that, which can be quite a feeling for a human being to have another being so dependent on you. And at some point you start to want to also reclaim some of your space, right? Your time. You need to sleep. You also need to eat. And there comes this line then of how we are wanting to support our children in being independent of us. That as they start growing into autonomous beings who have their own feelings, their own thoughts, their own ideas, their own actions, so that line between, well, what do I need to do and what can you do on your own starts emerging more and more. Now, the challenge of that process is that it can set up two different paradigms. It can set up the experience for your child that you are abandoning them because you're stopping doing what you've done before and letting them do it on their own. So they feel like, why aren't you helping me? Do you not love me? And they experience being abandoned, right? That's the first one. And the second one is that you're overcompensating for them, which means they experience that they're not good enough and they can't do it alone, which can be incredibly frustrating. So children, either way, and this is the reality of it, either way, you're kind of like got the bad end of it or the rough end of it. It's a very tricky line. You step just a fraction on the one line and they're going to think you're abandoning them. You step just the other side of the line and they think that you're overprotecting them or that they want to do it alone and you're not letting them. Why? Because you don't trust them. And then they come up with another whole scenario, which is the bittersweet of this thing called independence, right? It means your awareness has to be there. It means you're going to step on one side of those two boundaries. It means that you're most likely going to have your child come to you when they're older and they're going to complain about something you did earlier. It's inevitable. And I've just realized, okay, it's going to happen. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's the process of supporting independence. The challenge is while your child is experiencing either one of those two paradigms, there's going to be a huge amount of emotion that's coming up. Because there's a conflict there of, well, I want to be helped, but I want to be independent. And they themselves are probably struggling which side of those lines they want to be at. Oh, it's so lovely that I can sit back and mom's going to do something for me. Oh, it's so great that dad is letting me do this on my own. What trust he's showing me. So there you might have a whole lot of these emotions coming up, and it's like, how do we deal with that? And the thing that really is important, which is what this evening session is about, is the traditional techniques of supporting independence or getting our children to do things on their own is we usually try and drop the bar by making it seem easy. Because no doubt this child is now starting or venturing in doing something different. They're going to take on something that they haven't done before. So they as yet don't necessarily have the skills to do so. So there's a bit of concern and worry. Am I going to get it? Maybe I can, maybe I can't, and they're uncertain, right? So as parents, we usually come in by trying to make it look easy because we're wanting to get them to persevere. Don't worry, it's actually not easy. Look, tying shoelaces is quite simple. You just do this. I'll teach you. We'll get it in 10 minutes. Driving a car. It actually took me probably about a day and a half. My dad did some techniques. Don't worry, we'll get you sorted. Meaning we're trying to make it look, we're trying to encourage our children in some way. The challenge is it could often have the opposite result because our children actually aren't wanting us to drop the bar. They want to experience us supporting them in stepping up to it. Happiness is not the absence of the problems, it's our ability to deal with them. Being independent is not the absence of those things that we're needing done, it's our ability to deal with those things that we're needing to get done. It's a skill set of learning that. And as we all know in the human being world is experience. Experience gives us the skills. It empowers us to be competent in the things that we're needing to do to get the results that we're needing. And part of our job as parents is to hold that space while children experience becoming competent. So at some point they're breaking free on their own and they're making it work for them. It's a bittersweet road, which is why I say it's a bittersweet road we travel on, because either way, it's such a fragile line. At the same time, we're incredibly resilient, as we all know. But how can we maximize the chances and opportunities for our children to gather themselves, to pick themselves up if they're not getting the result that they want, and to persevere? Because there are thousands of quotes out there which keep reaffirming that success is just someone who hasn't given up. Success is the alignment of luck and skills, right? Or they say luck is actually the alignment of skills and timing, right? But the people will say that, the more competent I'm getting, the luckier I seem to be. There's a direct correlation there. It's not just by chance. So what we're wanting to do is to give our children the maximum opportunity and experience to really persevere, to develop the skills, not only the skills of doing something, but the skills of persevering. For example, some of you over the last 7 weeks will have had experiences where you might have felt that you were falling behind, you were not doing what you really wanted to do. Oh, how did I forget that? It's so obvious. Just, I can't even remember what we did in the first session. There's a whole lot of emotions going on there. So what would it be like for you, and maybe some of you already have those skills, to be able to say in that moment, I'm familiar with what's going on now. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that I need to do a couple of things to bring myself back in line so that I'm feeling on top of my game again. It would help if I went and did some exercise, because that's what I know is good for me. I reviewed my notes because I knew that would just bring my mind back to sharpness, and I probably would have to just do an extra bit of reading to bring myself up to date. Now they know what to do. They get back on track of it because they've got some self-discipline, which is also a practice, and they're back on track. But if you have no idea about how to manage yourself when you think you're failing or not getting the results, what's going to go through your mind? Oh, I've forgotten what's going on. And these other parents seem to be getting great results, but I'm not. It must be because I'm stupid, or because my child's too difficult, or because I'm really not coping that well. And then comes a whole spiral of just disempowering yourself more and more and more. So for me, what we're wanting is to give your children that experience that at times it's going to get rough, and how can they adapt and evolve the skill to handle that situation so they get back to where they need to get to. That for me is your ability to handle your problems, to manage your problems, as opposed to wishing and trying to protect our children that they're never going to have problems in their life. That's not going to serve them at all. We need to support our children in the skills of how to manage stuff. And I think that's really important. Does that make sense? Great. That's what we're looking at tonight, and we're going to move very quickly into that. So how are we going to look at it?